All right, so good morning and welcome to Studio Time with Deb, the online version. Today what we're going to talk about is the art of process. So a few weeks ago, I was listening to a Freakonomics podcast. I don't know if any of you listen to that. It's on NPR sometimes. You can get it on whatever channel. But it was on how to be creative. And I finally understood something that has really dogged me pretty much all of my creative life. But I'm going to back up first. So I'm going to show you some work that I don't think I have ever shown students before. I'm going to show you some of my very, very, very early work. Let me get that open for you. So if this is not the first piece I ever made, it's close to it. I started my jewelry making experience at the University of Houston in 1975. In my class, there were a lot of students who were focused, they were directed, they knew what they wanted to make. They might have struggled with some technical issues, but they were very clear about what they wanted to say or express with their artwork. I, on the other hand, was never like that. I loved the process. I could hammer all day long. I love understanding soldering and being able to put lots of complex pieces together. I love being able to construct and finish metal to look the way I want it to. It just makes my day. And don't get me wrong, I was not a craftsman. I mean, obviously, this one had been worn a lot before I ever took a picture of it. Obviously, it was completely beat to hell before I took a picture of it. Most of my early work, I don't have photos of at all. And that's probably a good thing. I know you're probably saying, if these are the good ones, what did the rest look like? So there's a very early piece, brass and silver. Yeah, they were not the best. They were not the best designs. They were not the best craftsmanship. They had a lot of issues. I loved making them. Loved, loved, loved making them. So I don't know where any of these pieces are anymore. I don't know if they even exist. They may not. They may all be in the garbage for all I know. I didn't have any great artistic statement to make that I could identify, at least, but I absolutely loved the process. And you could tell I also was not good at photography. Graduate school. When I went to graduate school, my lack of direction was probably even more obvious. My fellow graduate students, there was Ruth, and she did her thesis on the convergence of science and art. There was Craig. He did his thesis on machine technology as applied to jewelry making. There was Anne. She did her thesis on magical thinking as expressed in metal. It went on and on. I did mine, and I did my thesis, but it was like pulling teeth to get it together. And most of the time I felt like a fraud. I felt like I was making things up that the art crowd wanted to hear. I never felt like I had a strong voice or a strong direction or even a clear plan, but I loved the process. I love making things. I just didn't have the drive to say something with my work. I just loved the working. And I did like a lot of the pieces I produced. But I never felt satisfied. I never, ever got to the end point. There was, and still is, always a new technique to learn. Success was always elusive. If I got a photo in a magazine, I felt like that was nice, but why couldn't I be on the cover? If I got a photo in a book, that was good, but it wasn't an important book. It was just a minor book. All my career, no matter the achievement, the goal remained elusive. Perhaps in no small part because I never defined what the goal was. It's really hard to reach the end plan if you don't know what it is. So when I heard the Freakonomics podcast, I finally got some insight into my career and my creative process. The episode, I'm going to finish this first. This is my graduate school work. All right. So the episode of Freakonomics that I listened to was about innovation and the creative process. Several creativity researchers were interviewed. And the one I found specifically interesting was a man named David Galenson. It's Galenson if you want to do any research on him. He's an economist at the University of Chicago, and his main area of research is the life cycles of human creativity. Most of us as artists, we want to be innovators. We want to create something new. We want to create something that's our voice, our vision. Galenson separates innovators into two categories: experimentalists and conceptualists. So conceptual innovators are people who make very sudden breakthroughs by formulating new ideas. They are theorists. They want to know before they start exactly what the finished product's going to look like. They dream up an idea, they work at it systematically, methodically, deductively, and they make it happen. These artists have great confidence in what they're doing and what their ideas are. It allows them to put forward innovative ideas very early in their careers. As a result, these artists often peak very early in their careers. It's not uncommon for them to burn out or change career paths as time goes on. They move on to other things once their goal is achieved. Of the 30 plus people that I went to, the serious students that I went to undergraduate and graduate school with in the jewelry programs, fewer than 5 of us are still doing metal in any real capacity. Experimental innovators, on the other hand, they have a very, very vague but very ambitious goals. And because their goals are vague, they are uncertain about how to achieve them. So they work primarily by trial and error. These are the people who likely never reach their goals, since it's ill-defined, or they'd achieve them and don't even recognize it when they do because it's so ill-defined. They're not completely satisfied with their success. They approach creativity completely differently. It's a lifetime of trial and error. The process itself is the essence of the artistic endeavor. So experimental innovators work instinctively. They're always learning new things. Experimentalists have trouble recognizing when work is done because they always see new possibilities. They just decide eventually that enough is enough. It's time to quit. It's time to move on. Even if the work isn't perfect, uncertainty is pretty much the hallmark of experimental innovators. These artists develop their skills and their artistic voice very slowly over many years of trial and error. They often peak in their later years. Both systems of creativity have produced amazing works of art. Some artists are a combination of the two. Itzhak Perlman is an excellent representative of this. That is very, very rare. While I've had students who fall into the conceptual innovator category, my observation is that most of you are experimental innovators like I am. So what I want to do is to share some techniques and skills for creating within such an uncertain format. Number one, you need to realize that no piece is the ultimate, the end, or the goal. Encompassing everything that you want to say or convey or exhibit in a single definitive work is just not going to happen for us. Everything can be interpreted and reinterpreted and altered and changed. I've told you guys, and I've often said, and I believe that I could work on the same piece for the rest of my life. I could make it better by little. I could succeed. I could fail. I need to do something else. I could go back. I could look at it again. I could change it again. Don't do that. Just don't. It's better to work through the hard issues, make it good, and move on. Make another piece. You incorporate the lessons that you learned from the first piece. And then you make a third piece, and you incorporate the lessons you learned from the first two. Number two, you need to trust yourself. You can't develop your style or your voice if you don't know what your instincts are telling you. And you can't know what your instincts are telling you unless you practice using them. You need to push through the doubts. You need to try. When I was remodeling the kitchen, I had to make a final decision about the countertops and the flooring. The contractor was really after me because I was already behind schedule. The cabinets were in, they're hickory with a slight gray stain to them. And I had a gray speckled countertop, and I had a large gray porcelain tile for the floor. So I put the countertop sample on top of the corner of the island where the cabinets were visible. I put the floor tile on the floor so that I could look down on it and see what it would look like. And then I figured I'd live with it for a few days and all would be well. So while they were up, a friend came over, and after studying the layout, she said, "My, that's a lot of gray." So I have to say, I dithered for 2 more weeks. 2 more weeks before I could commit because I didn't trust my instincts. Finally, I did. I went with what I first thought was going to be right. I love it. I love, love, love it. But I had to trust myself, and it took a while. So learn to trust yourself. Trust your judgments. Go with your gut. Number 3, you need to enjoy the process. The process is an opportunity to learn new techniques and to collect tools. We all like to collect our tools. To study projects. Process is the mechanism for creative expression. Without the process, there is no result. Other things are important, but process of making judgments, assessing the needs, reassessing the design, that's important for artistic development. One thing I figured out is that the process is what I have left when the work is done. Whether it was successful or not, whether I ended up with a finished piece or not, the lessons that I learned, the mistakes that I made and hopefully learned not to repeat, the successes I had, the skills I learned, these are the things that stick with me and become part of my artistic voice. Number 4, don't fall into the sunk cost fallacy. So the sunk cost fallacy is what economists define as decision-making based on emotional response to what's already been invested in something. It's also known as throwing good money after bad. We often make major decisions based on emotions. But I've worked on this forever. I've got to just continue on this. But there's so much silver in this piece already. I've got to keep going. It's easier to fight the sunk cost fallacy if it's primarily about money or work, because you can sit down and do the math. But when it's about design, there's no spreadsheet to determine the value of continuing down the same path versus the value of pivoting or even making a major change. Often we overestimate the significance of continuing on the same path, and we underestimate the significance of continuing on that path that we'll never be happy with. With this in mind, I now understand why I am so accepting of failure, because failure is an opportunity to try again. So what do I do when I'm unhappy with a piece? The first thing that I do is I sit with it for a while. I make a special place for it on my desk. I have trays. They're half-size lunch trays and they stack. And I can lay out the project. I can set it aside so it's not in my way, but it's easily accessible. It's not out of sight, out of mind. I do want to revisit it regularly. I want to make judgments until I'm ready to pick it up and try it again. I recently finished a pie server that's been on my desk for years, several years. I was never quite happy with it, and even though I'd spent hours and hours and hours on it, and I kept adding to it, and I kept changing things, and I would, all kinds of things. Finally, I looked at it, and I figured out what I didn't like about it. I cut the piece into 3 pieces. I made a pie server, and I have 2 parts left over that are going to make other spoon handles. And now I'm very happy with what I've done. But it took me a long time to figure that out. I did look at it very regularly. One hurdle is defining the problem. And that's what took me so long. So why do you get stuck? You know, what is it that's holding me back? If the problem is not clearly defined, it's really hard to answer. Don't rush this, but do keep at it. Seeing sometimes takes a lot of time, but it also takes a lot of practice. So you need to allow for the time, but you need to stay at it. So creativity is a habit. It's practice problem solving with attitude. You need to allow for plans to change. Being fixed on an outcome can limit the possibilities for unusual and different solutions. There's usually a lot of solutions for any given problem. So coming up with lots of possibilities, and you choose the best. The more ideas you dream up, the more options you have for solutions. If you force yourself out of your comfort zone, especially for designing, if you risk things and try things, those will all make you a better designer. And the more you practice those, the better designer you'll be. Number 5, don't give up. Even when a piece is a failure, there's usually something valuable to be salvaged from it. But you need to make an assessment. You need to define what is wrong with it and what is right with it. You need to be specific. Usually when we're confronted with an issue or problem, we're looking for a previously used solution, something we've done before, something we're comfortable with to solve the problem. If we think about answering a problem with a new and different answer, built on the lessons we've already learned, but maybe putting them together in a really different way, or maybe seeking out different answers altogether, something we've never tried before, then we're exercising our creative thinking. The next time that you have an issue with a piece, you need to take a step back and then see if you can come up with a list of alternatives, a list of things that maybe you've never tried before. Come up with lots of ideas without judgment. You need to write them down, write them all down, even the dumb ones, even the crazy ones. Write down everything. Because later you can make judgments about what you want to keep and what you don't want to keep. But don't throw out any of them, not even the dumb ones, not even the crazy ones, not even the bad ones. Because sometimes when you go back through these ideas, the dumb ones, the crazy ones, the bad ones, they'll spark an idea that'll go somewhere else and go in a new direction, and they'll spark that creativity. So don't lose those. Don't get rid of those. Crazy ideas can inspire more crazy ideas and more creative thinking, and you need to go for it. Linus Pauling said that the trick is to have lots of ideas and then throw away the bad ones. So with that in mind, I'm going to, again, show you. So one of the things that I do, and I've talked to you guys about this before, this is tracing paper. And this is a thing that I've come up with that works for me, and you can try your own. But when I want to come up with a lot of ideas in a very short amount of time, I just want to throw the creative ideas out there. I will trace onto a piece of tracing paper either the shape of a stone or a piece of metal. Sometimes I'll copy it on a copy machine first, but I'll do a whole bunch of them on a page. And then what I'll do is just start drawing. And these are all terrible designs. They're awful, but they're starts, right? There's somewhere to start. There's somewhere to give you something to think about. So I will just start working my way down the page and I'll draw anything I want. And one of the things when you're doing these drawings that's really important is to not worry about what it's going to be, how you're going to make it, what you're going to make it out of. This is just to play. This is an experiment to play, to get ideas, to make you think about things a little bit differently. One of the exercises I love doing is that I love for friends of mine making something special for their significant birthdays. So I had a friend who was turning 50, and this is the sheet that I used to just do some designs. And you can see they're all 5s and O's. And again, no judgment about them. Some of them are really terrible. Some of them are really bad, but that's okay. Sometimes the really bad ones will give you an idea for something really good. So I just kept playing and kept playing and kept playing. And then when I found one that I thought that I would like, that I thought that I wanted to try, I'd make it in copper first. This is a close-up of some of the others. And you can see it. They're just junk. There's a 5 that I liked, that I thought was nice. This is the finished piece. So ultimately it did result in something. And there's the 5 and the O for the 50. I also like them to not be, I like them to be subtle. I don't like them to be something that it's obvious. You look at it and go, oh, that says 50. I like it to be something that's a little bit more subtle than that, but the wearer and I both know what it is. And if you look at it, you know what it is. So it's just an exercise. This is an exercise I gave students one year to use your initials. And so I used the D and the J. And again, some of these are truly awful. And that's fine. They're just drawings. They're whatever came into my head. They're trying things. And the process of looking at it, trying things, rejecting things, accepting things, going on from there, that is what develops your creative voice and your artistic voice. So this one, there's more. I brought out the tracing paper. So one of the things tracing paper does, I'm going to go back to this. This one is was on graph paper, which I use a lot. I don't know why, I just like it. But what I would do then is after I do a lot of ideas on the graph paper, and I would probably end up with 5 or 6 sheets of graph paper with just different ideas, then I would come in with the tracing paper and I would take the elements of things that I really like. So I like this shape on this one and the J over here. And then what I can do with the tracing paper is I can combine those. So here is where I've taken it and combined those. And then down here is where I've taken these, this from the D, this from the J, and combined them. This is the DJ. So this is letter D, and there's the J behind it. And that's the other ones. So what is it that I hope you've gotten out of this? And what is it that I really want to share with you? I want to leave you with this for the time that I'm going to not be doing these. I no longer beat myself up for not having a clear artistic vision. I have my own style. I have my own approach. And you should too. And I cherish what I do. I have a passion. I love what I do. Probably the best characteristic for me, the one that has served me the best over the years, is tenacity. Through my artistic journey, I have never given up, even when I've created crap, even when I've had years that I don't create anything. But with tenacity, I have never given up. I love what I do. I am the boss of the metal, and you are also the boss of the metal. So go and create. And I hope you enjoy the time off.